Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mona Moselhi, and tonight on Qnews special coverage, we'll be discussing mounting tension in Gaza and Southeast Asia. In Gaza, Israeli airstrikes continue as Egypt facilitates critical humanitarian aid into the besieged enclave. Meanwhile, on the Thailand-Cambodia border, deadly clashes have entered a third day, displacing thousands. We'll be discussing that in our full coverage right ahead. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received a phone call today from French President Emmanuel Macron, reaffirming strong bilateral ties and joint efforts to support Gaza, mediation, and Palestinian statehood. According to presidential spokesman Ahmed Fahmy, the call reaffirmed strong bilateral ties and assured commitment to build on the momentum of Macron's recent visit to Cairo, particularly in economic and investment cooperation. The two leaders discussed Egypt's efforts to mediate a Gaza ceasefire and facilitate detainee exchanges, stressing the urgent need for effective humanitarian aid to civilians in the Strip. Macron voiced France's full support for Egypt's mediation, and both sides reiterated the need for a just resolution to the Palestinian issue based on international legitimacy. President Sisi welcomed Macron's announcement that France will formally recognize the state of Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September, calling it a step forward, implementing the two-state solution and achieving lasting peace. Egyptian sources have stated that 117 aid trucks have entered Gaza via the Zakim and Kerem Abu Salem crossings. That comes as a part of Egypt's ongoing efforts to deliver humanitarian relief to the besieged Gaza Strip. Earlier, Egyptian sources reported trucks entering on Wednesday and Thursday. In total, 161 trucks crossed Thursday night to early Friday, while 166 entered between Wednesday and early Thursday through same crossings. The aid, including flour, baby formula, and food, has reached Gaza for a third consecutive day. Egypt and Qatar have reaffirmed their relentless mediation efforts in Gaza, aiming to end the war, alleviate humanitarian suffering, protect civilians, and facilitate detainee exchanges. In a statement by Egypt's Foreign Ministry, Egypt and Qatar reported progress during the recent intense three-week negotiation round, emphasizing that temporary pauses for consultations are normal in complex talks. Both countries condemned misleading media leaks that undermine negotiation efforts and called on international media to responsibly highlight Gaza's unprecedented suffering without jeopardizing peace efforts. In partnership with the US, they remain committed to achieving a comprehensive ceasefire agreement. Palestinians in Gaza are enduring worsening hunger with long lines of food and growing desperation as the blockade continues. At a meal distribution site in central Gaza, refugees waited for hours to receive food, holding up empty containers as volunteers rushed to serve them. A father from Nusayrat camp said he stands in line from morning to noon just to feed his children. Gaza health officials reported 9 more hunger-related deaths, raising the toll to 122 since October. UN agencies warn of a worsening crisis as food and medicine remain critically scarce under Israel's blockade. Thousands rallied outside the British Prime Minister's office protesting Gaza's deepening food crisis with a noisy show of pots and pans. Around 2,000 to 3,000 protesters blocked London's Whitehall district on Friday, banging pots and pans to protest famine-like conditions in Gaza. The demonstration, sparked by harrowing images of starving children, halted traffic and trapped a tourist bus near Downing Street. Gaza's health ministry says 9 more Palestinians died from hunger in the past 24 hours as the food crisis continues to worsen. A caravan of around 100 vehicles moved through downtown Santiago on Friday night, waving Palestinian flags and wearing the traditional kufiyya scarf in solidarity with the Palestinian cause. The demonstrators urged the Chilean government to cut ties with Israel, which they described as a genocidal state, according to protester Lali Flores from the collective Orient for Palestine. The event was organized by Club Palestino, representing Chile's Palestinian community, the largest outside the Arab world. The protest highlighted the deepening humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The UN World Food Programme says nearly a quarter of Gaza's 2.1 million residents face famine-like conditions, with rising cases of acute malnutrition and reports of starvation deaths, including children. Egypt intensifies Gaza's aid mediation, reaffirming its central role in ceasefire talks and humanitarian relief. The details.
Egyptian official sources told Al News that over 398 trucks entered Gaza via the Karam Abu Salim and Zakim border crossings within the span of 3 days, reflecting intensified efforts to address the growing humanitarian crisis and the spread of famine. Egypt's foreign ministry has consistently highlighted the central role of Cairo in mediating indirect ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas, working alongside Qatar and with the support of the United States. On July 25th, Egypt's foreign ministry reaffirmed that Cairo and Doha are continuing intensive mediation to end the Gaza war, alleviate civilian suffering, and protect civilians, and also facilitate a detainee exchange, clarifying that pauses in talks are normal due to negotiation complexities. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry also warned against malicious propaganda that is trying to distort Egypt's support for Palestinian rights and undermine the mediation efforts, stressing that the need for accurate reporting on Gaza's suffering and the diplomatic process is a necessity. Earlier in June, a joint Egyptian-Qatari statement pledged intensified efforts for a 60-day truce, reopening border crossings, delivering aid, and paving the way for long-term ceasefire and reconstruction, as outlined in the March 2025 Egyptian Reconstruction Plan endorsed by the Arab League. Al News also confirmed that talks are set to resume next week after Israel reviews the response of Hamas, noting progress during the recent 3-week round. That comes as Egypt continues to position itself as a stabilizing regional actor committed to protecting civilians, preventing famine, and facilitating a political resolution of the ongoing conflict.
Well, for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by the political science professor and specialist in regional and international security, Dr. Ahmed Shahat. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Qnews. Let me here start by asking you, how do you assess coordination between Cairo and Paris, particularly in balancing diplomacy with humanitarian priorities in the Gaza crisis?
In the beginning, after greeting Suna, I think that the Egypt is trying to maintain the state of negotiation and not to giving up the idea of failing the negotiation at this point, and recalling, as always, that the roles either from Europe or in the region in a bid to reactivate the role of mediations between particularly Egypt and Qatar, and other countries that adopting such a status in reaching to the peace and ending the war effectively, away of other complexities imposed by Israel. The idea of recalling European role, such as France, in order to mobilizing the international community in order to put a decisive line on such a period that is about in reaching 2 years by using the weapon of starvation and breaching to all the international norms and conventions that affect largely in the framework of the international order. So the same thing goes by the Egyptian state in its intent in abolishing such schemes in a larger scale, imposing an occupation status and executing its Israeli schemes through the deploying the military presence and continuation the starvation weapons and imposing a reality for the inhabitants, fostering its idea of the forced displacement. Most notably, that the United States has put itself in the equation by Israel, not in the role of the sponsor or mediator. Such a thing that weakened at larger scale in reaching a solution. And it says clearly that there is no Israeli-American desire in reaching a real agreement. In the equation of negotiations, the strongest role that has its presence on the ground, that it is capable to impose the reality. But bearing Hamas the responsibility of failing the negotiation that is repeatedly showed in several stations of negotiation. But it is confirmed that there is no real desire by the United States and Israel in reaching a real solution, but given a very formal shape in it to execute the schemes of Israel.
Right. From your point of view, to which extent has Egypt been instrumental in maintaining the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza, particularly through the Zakim and Abu Kerm or Kerm Abu Salim crossings?
The Egyptian state is mobilizing in such a very critical moment with the cooperation with the mediators and the effective European roles in order to give a momentum to give an end to the exacerbation of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, which is the bed of delivering the aids in a disciplined manner in order to have the people of Gaza to reach, and even it is costly, or opening a number of load trucks, as we've seen in the past 3 days through Sikim or Karim Abu Salim's crossing in order to minimize the crisis. It is a very important role in order to reach such an equation, and using the international rejection of using the hunger as a weapon that would trigger the international community in particular, that has a very sensitivity within the people, either in the level of the region or internationally.
Right. With rising reports of hunger-related fatalities, how critical is this latest round of aid in curbing the risk of famine in Gaza?
Absolutely. What we are seeing in Gaza is very shameful in the level of humanity that do not respect any standards of the humanity and defying the peoples throughout the world. The idea of more than 1,000 on daily basis that witnessing 100 or even more by targeting through delivering their aid that gives the impression that the US-backed contractors that implicitly with Israel is trying to expel the people and do not contribute to deliver the aid that would reflect that the unprofessional manner of delivering or running such a thing. So the increasing number of the killing people by starvation that affirms the malintention of Israel in reaching the forced displacement and creating an environment to expel the inhabitants that is linked to of the lack of any means of life and delivering the aids directly that would help them to be resilient and to stay on hold or to stay in the ground.
Now, how different are the current mediation efforts led by Egypt and Qatar from the past negotiations in terms of their approach or their effectiveness or the goals or the end results that they want to reach?
There was some sort of a very optimistic view by all the observers in reaching solution, and even Witkoff has announced that we are very close to announce an agreement within the past 24. Throughout 28 negotiations, ranging by delivering the aids managed by the United Nations, such as UNRWA, the mission of distributing the aid throughout Gaza, as they are very fully aware of such an operation and exiting the American contractors, and was agreed upon between both sides in the framework of the mediators' pressure and their success in reaching a positive step. The main sticky point that was linked to the Israeli withdrawal, and they were disagreed in only a few meters. There was some sort of flexibility by Hamas with such a context, and all maps being re-modified, presented by Israel. And in the meantime, there was some sort of understanding by the number of hostages and their types between the life sentence, the prisoners. So there was some sort of a breakthrough among such ideas, and the idea of having guarantees regarding the numbers in either between the 10 live hostages and other bodies.
Yes.
But there was some sort of a surprise before the surprise. The agreement has failed and holding Hamas responsible.
This is what we want to speak about here. The issue is that negotiations were or is on a pause. Now, how far do breaks in ceasefire talks are expected, and how should such pauses be understood or dealt with within the media and the general public?
Absolutely, that would increase the state of frustration, as there was some sort of readiness in reaching an agreement and ending such a movement and in very provocative humanitarian dimensions But despite such challenges and the state of frustration, the Egyptian state, along with Qatar as a mediator, not to surrender to such a reality, and this cautioned the American circles to return once again to upon the agreement within the next week. But naturally, the malintentions and not to urge Israel to respond as if there was a real well for Israel would have reached an agreement, as we've seen the scheme of genocidal war to be imposed on the negotiation and ultimately to have Hamas responsible for this. And this will be dealt in the framework of the logic of priorities by delivering the humanitarian aid or reaching a ceasefire.
Yes, but I really want to ask you, sir, about this very particular point. How should the media and the public deal with such breaks in very crucial crucial talks as such?
For the media outlets to show the image in a very credible way. So the idea of having the Palestinian side to be responsible for failing the negotiation isn't inaccurate. So showing the issue through media pressure by covering the real humanitarian crisis on the ground, so naturally will be a pressure upon the Israeli communities along with the Israeli administration. So the idea of exchanging the hostages as requested by US and European countries to be an available proposals via media pressure that reflect the public. So the idea of adopting one single idea that Hamas is breaching or sabotaging the agreement throughout the media, this isn't realistic. In order to reach a very disciplined media vision to help into finding a solution, but to have more complexity. But the idea for addressing the matter regionally and internationally that way do not help to build a full public internet to have some sort of a solution.
Clear, Dr. Ahmed, clear, very clear. Media should be so accurate in their dealing with such news, particularly at this very critical time. That was Dr. Ahmed Shahed from Cairo, the political science professor and a specialist in regional and international security. We thank you so much for joining us on Qnews. And now we move on to the South Asia, where clashes along the Thai-Cambodian border have now entered a third day, forcing hundreds of Cambodians to seek shelter in makeshift camps across Phra Bear province, and families gathered under plastic tarpaulins while Thailand closed most crossings, allowing only emergency medical cases. Both countries have accused each other of provoking the violence, calling for urgent negotiations while claiming self-defense. Cambodia says 13 people, including 5 soldiers and 8 civilians, were killed as border clashes with Thailand intensified. Phnom Penh has urged the international community to condemn what it calls Thai aggression, warning of possible military escalation. The flare-up follows the killing of a Cambodian soldier in May, which sparked a diplomatic standoff and troop deployments. Over 130,000 people have now been displaced. And fresh clashes have broken out in areas beyond the original conflict zones, with Cambodian military vehicles seen mobilizing through Udar Minitri province. Footage showed trucks under tarpaulin and soldiers escorting the convoy, though details on troop numbers remain unverified. The renewed activity marks a deepening of the worst conflict between the neighbors in over a decade. US President Donald Trump has announced he was reaching out to the leaders of Cambodia and Thailand to urge a ceasefire amid ongoing border clashes entering the third day. He confirmed completing a call with Cambodia and planned a follow-up based on Thailand's response. Trump described his efforts as an attempt to simplify a complex conflict. He also stated that his call to the Thai leader was imminent, signaling active US diplomatic engagement to halt the violence. Furious fighting continues along the Thai-Cambodian border in what has become the deadliest escalation in over a decade as ceasefire efforts stall and violence spreads to new regions. Tens of thousands flee their homes. Here is a closer look at the unfolding crisis. Well, for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Ms. Al Ahram, Managing Editor Mohammed Izzeddin. Good afternoon to you and welcome to Qnews. Let me start by asking you, what are the root causes behind this latest round of border violence between Thailand and Cambodia?
Thanks for having me in Qnews. The main roots are historical. Throughout more than 100 years that started since dividing the borders following the end of 1907. Upon ending the French occupation of such areas and some areas in the southeastern of Asia, the conflicted areas witnessed several clashes throughout the past years, ranging by mild and dangerous clashes. Some clashes lately in past May upon explosion one of the mines, and the both forces exchange fires between each other. That the most complicated matter that the border area that has a very historical importance as has a very significant temperature between Thailand and Cambodia. In addition to the historical values, along with the economic values of the border area between the two countries that extended for more than 800 kilometers, such an area is a tourist and has several areas of hotels and recreational centers that observed several employees of the two countries. The issues was exaggerated or gained in a very increasing importance upon with the political standoff, particularly within Thailand, particularly when the government suspended its prime minister that has a link with leaders in Cambodia. In addition, that there is some sort of a criticism of the role of the Thai armies that came on the background of the clashes. There was a leaked phone call between the prime minister and her relatives in Cambodia. So the crisis is very much linked to the historical border crisis, in addition a political standoff and an economic importance of the areas of the borders that represent a great income coming out of tourism.
Ms. Azzedine, this very particular area has the influence of two big powers, the United States from one side and China on the other. Now, how serious is the current escalation compared to previous incidents over the past decade, and how does this reflect on any kind of relations between both the United States and China?
Absolutely, it is a very important question. China had a great role in the liberation movement in the Eastern Asian countries. There was some sort of support by some countries. Therefore, such a thing affected the arrangements of some governments, and the United States is very much concerned with the Southeastern Asia that is very close of an area of future laid down by the United States, which is the eastern of the ocean. And also the previous USSR had a role of such divisions throughout many years. And on the other hand, the United States is very much concerned. So there are attempts of not to expand such clashes and to be changed into wars, as Thai's representative in the United Nations yesterday, when he called upon not to have any sort of aggression against Thailand. Right. Cambodia had requested a session into the UN Security Council to address this matter, and the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim,
yes,
as his country is presiding the Asian
right.
this edition. So
it seems, Mr. Mohammed Azzedine, that neither of the big powers really want more escalation in this area. That was Mr. Mohammed Azzedine from Cairo, Al Ahram managing editor. We thank you for joining us here on Qnews. And as tensions persist from Gaza to Southeast Asia, Qnews remains committed to delivering clear, verified reporting from every front. Stay with us for continuing coverages and expert insights. Many thanks for watching, and don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNews EGY to stay informed. This was Mona Moselhi, and stay tuned for more updates on Q News.